I work security at Munich Airport, Terminal 2. Last Thursday, an American man in his 50s approached my checkpoint visibly sweating. He held up his boarding pass and demanded to know why his gate number didn't exist. I looked at the pass, Gate B42. I pointed to the sign directly above us that said, Gates B40, B50. He shook his head. That's impossible. B comes after A. I just came from Terminal A. Why would they put B gates in a different terminal? I explained that gate letters don't work like alphabetical order. He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of Terminal A's map. See? No B gates there. This airport is broken. I told him he needed to take the shuttle to Terminal B. He stared at me like I'd suggested he swim across the runway. A shuttle? I already went through security. Why would I leave the secure area? I explained the shuttle runs between terminals inside security. He asked if it cost extra. When I said no, he asked if it required a separate ticket. Then he asked if Germans were trying to trick tourists by making terminals confusing on purpose. He missed his flight arguing about airport design logic. The shuttle runs every 3 minutes. This is the kind of first-hand absurdity I track constantly. Most channels mock. Here, we decode why people think this way. If you want the deeper patterns behind moments like this, you already know where to stay. A woman at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam spent 20 minutes shouting at the departure board. Not at a person, at the electronic board itself. She kept saying, "Show me Atlanta," louder and louder, like the board was voice-activated. When a KLM employee approached to help, she explained that American airports have voice commands now. So why doesn't Europe? The employee gently explained that departure boards just display information. She insisted she'd seen it work at JFK. The employee pulled up her flight information manually. She asked why Europe was so behind on technology. I'm a passport control officer at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. A couple from Texas approached my booth, looking irritated before I even spoke. The man slapped his passport on the counter and said, "We're American citizens. We shouldn't have to wait in this line." I explained that all non-EU citizens use this line, regardless of nationality. He pointed at the EU citizens line, which was empty. "That line's wide open. We're allies with France. We fought 2 world wars together. Just let us through there." I told him I legally cannot process non-EU passports in that lane. His wife chimed in, "We have global entry. Doesn't that work here?" I explained global entry is a US program for entering the United States, not for entering other countries. She looked genuinely confused. "But we paid for 5 years. It should work everywhere." "That's false advertising." I said it's clearly stated as a US program. She asked to speak to someone about getting a refund then, because what's the point of having it if it only works in one country? The husband pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the American embassy. This is discrimination against US citizens." I told him he was welcome to call, but he still needed his passport stamped. He demanded to know why Europe doesn't have a fast pass system like Disney World. When I said some countries have their own trusted traveler programs for their residents, he asked how much it costs to buy one right now at the airport. I explained you can't purchase EU citizenship at passport control. He then argued that since his grandfather was Irish, he should qualify for the EU line. I asked if he had an Irish passport. He said no, but his grandfather immigrated from County Cork in 1952. I explained that Ancestry doesn't grant you EU passport privileges without actual EU citizenship. He said that seemed pretty unfair to Americans whose relatives built Europe after the war. They stood at my booth for 15 minutes, Googling Irish citizenship requirements. The line behind them stretched to the terminal entrance. Eventually, I stamped their passports. As they walked away, I heard him tell his wife, "We're definitely writing a letter to our congressman about this." I work at the security screening area in Oslo Airport. An American woman arrived at my checkpoint wearing at least 7 pounds of jewelry. Rings on every finger, 3 necklaces, chandelier earrings, bangles covering both arms. I politely asked her to remove her jewelry before going through the metal detector. She looked offended. In America, I just walk through. Your machines must be outdated. I explained that all airport metal detectors work the same way. She insisted American technology is more advanced and can filter out jewelry metal from weapon metal. She reluctantly removed one necklace and tried to walk through. The detector screamed. I asked her to remove all metal items. She took off 2 bracelets. The detector went off again. I pointed to her remaining jewelry. She said, "This is my wedding set. I'm not taking off my wedding rings for some European scanner." I explained it's a security requirement. She asked if I was anti-marriage or something. She finally removed most of her jewelry, except her watch. She placed everything in the bin with visible resentment. After walking through successfully, she spent 5 minutes putting everything back on at the collection area, blocking other passengers. Then she demanded to know why Norway doesn't have TSA pre-check. I told her TSA pre-check is an American program. She said she pays $85 for 5 years, and it should work anywhere with airports. I explained she'd need to apply for separate programs in other countries. She asked why Europe doesn't just copy America's system since it works better. Most creators stop at the punchline. I trace the psychology behind it. That's why people who subscribe here aren't just watching. They're learning how culture actually programs behavior. Later that day, a man argued with my colleague for 10 minutes because we confiscated his 32-ounce bottle of Gatorade. He claimed that Norwegian law doesn't apply to liquids purchased in America. He said because he bought it in Dallas, it falls under Texas regulations, which he insisted allow liquids up to 1 gallon on planes. My colleague explained the 100 ml rule applies to all liquids regardless of purchase location. He threatened to contact the Norwegian FAA. We don't have an FAA. He asked for a refund for his Gatorade. It was half empty. At Helsinki Airport Customs, I watched an American family approach the nothing-to-declare green lane while visibly carrying 4 sealed duty-free shopping bags. I redirected them to the red goods-to-declare lane. The father protested immediately. "We bought this in duty-free. That means no duties." I explained that duty-free means you don't pay tax at purchase, but you still must declare items over the allowance when entering a country. He shook his head vigorously. "Duty-free means duty-free. It's in the name. You can't charge us twice." I told him I'm not charging him anything yet, but I need to verify his purchases are within Finland's limits. He asked what the limit was. I told him $430 per person for goods from outside the EU. He had 2 bottles of premium bourbon worth $300 each in one bag. He insisted they only counted as one purchase because he bought them at the same store. I explained each bottle is assessed separately. He said that's technically theft because the store didn't warn him about fake European duty-free rules. His wife pulled out her receipt. "Look, it says right here, duty-free. That's a legally binding contract." I told her it's not a contract, it's a sales receipt. She asked to speak to whoever makes Finland's laws because this is entrapment. I explained customs regulations aren't entrapment. The husband then claimed he read online that Finland is tax-free for tourists. I clarified that tourists can get VAT refunds on some purchases, but alcohol has specific import duties. He asked why Europe makes everything so complicated compared to American freedom. After 20 minutes, they paid the duty on 1 bourbon bottle and decided to throw away the second one rather than pay. I explained they couldn't throw away alcohol in the airport. They asked if they could drink both bottles before leaving the airport. I said no. They ended up paying duty on both bottles while complaining that Finland was basically communist. The bourbon was made in Kentucky. I'm a gate agent at Lisbon Airport. An American woman approached my desk 1 hour before her flight to Madrid, extremely agitated. She thrust her boarding pass at me and said, "You changed my gate without telling me. I've been waiting at gate 12 for 2 hours." I looked at her boarding pass. It said gate 27, printed clearly at the top. I pointed this out. She said, "No, when I checked in this morning, the screen said gate 12. I explained that gates are typically assigned closer to departure time, not at check-in. She insisted that in America, your gate never changes from what you see in the morning. I pulled up her flight information. The gate was first assigned 40 minutes ago as gate 27. It never was gate 12. She didn't believe me. I wrote it down in my planner. Gate 12. I'm very organized. I suggested perhaps she'd misread the screen. She pulled out her planner and showed me where she'd written Gate 12 in pen, as if her handwriting proved the gate assignment. I gently told her that gates are displayed on departure boards and her boarding pass, not in personal planners. She demanded to know why we don't send text message updates about gates like Southwest does. I explained that gate information is on the departure boards throughout the terminal. She said she shouldn't have to keep checking boards like it's the 1990s. Then she asked if Portugal has an app that actually works. I told her most airlines have apps. She said she has the app, but it's all in Portuguese. I pointed out there's a language toggle in the settings. She said she tried that, but then everything turned into Spanish, which is not the same as English. She made her flight, but she asked to file a complaint about the gate changing without notification. The gate never changed. Her planner is still wrong. At Copenhagen Airport, I work at the information desk. An American man stormed up holding a rental car confirmation and demanded to know why the car size was listed in made-up numbers. His reservation showed a vehicle description including 4.5 meters long. He said, "What is this? How am I supposed to know if that's a big car or a small car? Why can't you just tell me in feet like a normal country?" I explained that Denmark uses the metric system. He responded, "So do we. We have 2-liter bottles. But for cars, we use feet." I told him 4.5 meters is about 15 feet. He squinted at me suspiciously. "Are you just guessing? Do you actually know the conversion?" I assured him I did. He asked me to prove it mathematically. I declined to do metric conversions on demand. He asked if there was someone American who could help him instead. Then he pointed to the fuel policy. Return with full tank or pay $1.80 per liter. He said, "A liter isn't a real measurement for gas. We use gallons. How much is this in actual money?" I told him roughly €6.80 per gallon. He practically shouted, "Almost €7 for 1 gallon? That's illegal." I explained that fuel is more expensive in Europe. He said, "No, I mean it's illegal to charge in liters when gallons are the standard." I told him liters are the standard in Denmark. He asked when Denmark switched to metric and whether they consulted with Americans first. He wanted to cancel his rental car and take trains instead. I pulled up train information. He saw the speeds listed as 200 km/h and asked if that was faster or slower than regular trains. I said it's a high-speed train. He asked for the speed in real numbers. I told him about 125 miles per hour. He paused, then said, "That can't be safe. In America, trains don't go that fast because it's dangerous." I assured him European high-speed trains are very safe. He muttered something about European safety standards and walked away, presumably to Google how many feet are in a meter. I'm a currency exchange clerk at Vienna Airport. An American couple approached my window with a stack of US dollars, asking to exchange it for euros. Standard transaction. I counted their money. $500. At that day's rate, they'd receive approximately $465. The man looked at the figure I'd written down and said, "Wait, that's less than what we gave you. You're ripping us off." I explained the exchange rate. He interrupted, "No, I get exchange rates. But the euro is fake money. The dollar is real. So you should give us more euros, not less." I told him the euro is worth more than the dollar currently. He laughed. That's impossible. America has the strongest economy. Our money is worth more. I showed him the current exchange rate on my screen, $1 or 0.93. He studied it, then said, "Your computer is wrong. Check Google." His wife Googled it on her phone. She confirmed the rate. He stared at the phone like it had betrayed him. But we're America. How is European money worth more than American money? I explained that currency values fluctuate based on various economic factors. He asked when this happened. I said the euro has been worth more than the dollar for most of the past 20 years, with some fluctuations. He looked genuinely upset. Nobody told us this before we came here. This should be in the travel warnings. Then he asked if I could give them the American rate instead. I asked what he meant. He said, the rate where our money is worth more. The correct rate. I told him there's only one exchange rate, and it's the current market rate. He asked to speak to my manager about getting a fair deal for Americans. I am the manager. He asked if he could pay in dollars directly in Austria instead. I explained most places don't accept dollars. He said that seemed discriminatory against the world's reserve currency. They eventually exchanged $200 and kept the rest as dollars, in case the euro collapses. I'm a boarding agent at Stockholm Arlanda Airport. An American man approached the gate for his flight to London 20 minutes after final boarding had been called. The door was closed. He demanded to be let on. I explained the door closes 10 minutes before departure, and the plane was currently pushing back from the gate. He could see it through the window, moving away. He said, "Just call them back. I'm here now." I told him once the door is closed and the aircraft is moving, we cannot reopen it. He insisted that in America, they hold planes if you're close. I explained that maybe for a minute or two, but he was 20 minutes late. He said he was at the airport, just at the wrong gate, so it shouldn't count as late. I asked why he was at the wrong gate. He said he went to gate 5 because 5 is my lucky number. His boarding pass said gate 32. He claimed the boarding pass wasn't clear about which number was the gate. He demanded I book him on the next flight for free since this was the airport's fault for having confusing gate numbers. I explained he'd need to purchase a new ticket. He asked how much. I quoted him roughly 3,200 SEK for the next available seat. He said, "What is SEK? I need it in dollars." I told him about $300. He shouted, $300? For a 1-hour flight? Just because I was a few minutes late? He threatened to sue the airport for not holding his plane. I asked on what legal grounds? He said, customer service violations. In America, the customer is always right. I told him that while we value customers, we also value the 200 passengers already on the plane who want to depart on time. He said those passengers should understand that Americans have rights. Then he asked if we could radio the pilot to come back. I explained that's not how aviation works. He asked if Sweden has Uber for planes. I told him no. He asked how far London is and whether he could just rent a car and drive. I said it's across the ocean. He stared at me silently for 5 seconds, then said, "England is an island?" I confirmed. He said he thought it was connected to Europe. I explained it's separated by the English Channel. He asked if there's a bridge. I mentioned the Channel Tunnel. He perked up. "So I can drive?" I explained the tunnel is for trains. He asked why Europe doesn't just build a bridge for cars like San Francisco did. He eventually bought a ticket for a flight 6 hours later. As he walked away, I heard him on the phone saying, "You won't believe how incompetent Swedish airports are." Somewhere right now, another American is confidently explaining to a European gate agent that military service should count as a valid form of ID for international travel. If you caught yourself smiling at the pattern, not just the story, you're the kind of viewer I make these for. I'll keep collecting these field-level human studies, but subscribers? They see everyone.